Welcome to Hercule Mysteries, unraveling the genius of Hercule Poirot.
Picture a luxurious yacht gliding through the moonlit sea, its decks alive with the laughter of the elite, until a scream shatters the night. Sir Reginald Ashbourne lies dead, a jeweled dagger in his heart. A mysterious box beside him, its secret stolen. Who among the glittering guests, his grieving wife, a cunning financier, a glamorous actress, or a silent doctor, wields the hand of a killer? As the sapphire yacht becomes a floating prison, only Hercule Poirot, with his unmatched brilliance, can unravel the web of lies, hidden motives, and shocking betrayals. Will he expose the murderer before the truth sinks into the depths? Dive into Murder on the Sapphire Yacht, a classic Agatha Christie-style mystery where every clue counts and no one is what they seem. Chapter 1. The Invitation to the Sapphire Yacht. In the gentle haze of an English summer, where the air shimmered with the promise of leisure, the Sapphire Yacht lay anchored off the Devon coast, its sleek silhouette cutting a fine figure against the azure sea. The vessel, a floating palace of polished teak and gleaming brass, belonged to Sir Reginald Ashbourne, a textile magnate whose wealth was matched only by his penchant for lavish gatherings. It was August 1928, and the invitation to board the yacht for a week-long voyage had been extended to a select group of guests, each drawn from the upper echelons of society or its more curious fringes. The occasion was to celebrate Sir Reginald's 50th birthday, though whispers suggested a grander purpose, a business deal perhaps, or a secret to be unveiled beneath the stars. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever the loyal companion to Hercule Poirot, stood on the quay at Torquay, shielding his eyes against the midday sun. The sea sparkled invitingly, but Hastings felt a prickle of unease. He was no stranger to luxury. Yet there was something about the sapphire yacht, a sense of artifice, as if the opulence concealed a darker intent. Beside him, Hercule Poirot, immaculate in a cream linen suit and a Panama hat, adjusted his mustache with a delicate flick of his fingers. His green eyes, sharp as cut emeralds, surveyed the scene with quiet intensity. "Mon ami," Poirot said, his voice a soft cadence. "You are troubled, non? The sea, it is calm. The company promises to be distinguished. And yet you frown as if expecting a storm." Hastings chuckled, though the sound was strained. "It's nothing, Poirot. Just a feeling. These grand affairs. Too many egos in one place, I suppose. Bound to stir trouble." Poirot's lips twitched in a faint smile. "Trouble, Hastings, perhaps. But it is the little gray cells that will make order from chaos, should it arise. Come. Let us board. Sir Reginald has promised a spectacle, and Hercule Poirot already aboard, their figures visible on the sun-drenched deck. Sir Reginald Ashbourne, tall and commanding, stood at the rail, his silver hair catching the light. Beside him was his wife, Lady Beatrice, her elegance marred by a tightness about her mouth, as if she bore a private burden. Nearby, Miss Clara Duval, a French actress of some renown, laughed brightly, her voice carrying over the waves. She was flanked by two men, Mr. Leonard Grayson, a financier with a reputation for ruthlessness, and Dr. Harold Wentworth, a physician whose quiet demeanor belied a sharp intellect. Completing the party were Mrs. Evelyn Marlowe, a widowed heiress with a penchant for gossip, and Mr. Victor Crane, a young journalist whose eager eyes suggested he was hunting a story. The launch docked, and Poirot and Hastings were welcomed aboard with champagne and polite smiles. Sir Reginald, his handshake firm, exuded the confidence of a man accustomed to command. "Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings, a pleasure. I trust you'll find the sapphire yacht to your liking. A week of sea air and fine company. What could be better?" Poirot inclined his head. "It is most generous, Sir Reginald. The setting is magnifique. and I am certain the company will prove illuminating. Lady Beatrice, her silk dress whispering as she moved, offered a strange smile. "We're delighted you could join us, Monsieur Poirot, though I confess, I hope your talents won't be needed. We intend a peaceful voyage." "Peace, madame," Poirot replied, "is often a delicate illusion. But fear not, Hercule Poirot is here to observe, not to disturb." The afternoon passed in a blur of introductions and small talk. The guests mingled on the deck, their laughter mingling with the clink of glasses and the soft lapping of waves. Hastings, ever sociable, found himself drawn into conversation with Clara Duval, whose charm was as disarming as it was calculated. She spoke of her latest role in a West End play, her eyes darting occasionally to Sir Reginald, who seemed preoccupied with Grayson, the financier. Their discussion, conducted in low tones, had an edge of urgency that piqued Hastings's curiosity. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, the guests retired to their cabins to dress for dinner. Hastings, sharing a suite with Poirot, noted his friend's silence as they prepared. "You're awfully quiet, Poirot. Something on your mind?" Poirot, adjusting his tie before a mirror, met Hastings' gaze in the reflection. "The mind, Hastings, it is always at work. This yacht, these people, they are a puzzle, each piece carefully placed. I observe the glances, the hesitations, the words left unsaid. There is
Crystal.
The meal was exquisite. Oysters, roasted pheasant, and a delicate soufflé. But the atmosphere was taut. Lady Beatrice, seated at her husband's right, toyed with her food, her eyes flitting nervously to the other guests. Grayson, opposite her, spoke loudly of stock markets, his voice grating on Mrs. Marlowe, who countered with barbed remarks about new money. Dr. Wentworth, quiet as ever, observed the exchange with a scientist's detachment, while Victor Crane scribbled notes in a small book, his pen moving furtively. Clara Duval, radiant in a sapphire gown, steered the conversation to lighter topics, but even her charm could not dispel the undercurrent of unease. Sir Reginald, at the head of the table, seemed distracted, his gaze lingering on a locked mahogany box placed on a sideboard. Hastings, seated beside Poirot, leaned close. "That box, what do you make of it?" Sir Reginald keeps glancing at it. Poirot's eyes narrowed. "A box, Hastings, is never just a box. It holds something, perhaps a secret, perhaps a treasure. We shall see." As coffee was served, Sir Reginald rose, tapping his glass for attention. "My friends," he began, his voice resonant, "this voyage is more than a celebration. Tomorrow, I shall make an announcement that will interest you all. A matter of business, and perhaps legacy. For now, enjoy the evening. The sea is calm, and the stars are bright." The guests murmured their approval, but Hastings caught the fleeting expressions that passed between them. Clara's sharp glance at Grayson, Lady Beatrice's tightened grip on her glass, Wentworth's furrowed brow. Only Poirot, sipping his coffee, seemed unperturbed, his eyes glinting with the quiet thrill of a puzzle taking shape. As the party dispersed to the deck for cigars and liqueurs, Hastings lingered with Poirot in the saloon. "What do you think he meant by legacy?" Hastings asked. Poirot smiled faintly. "Sir Reginald, he plays a game, Hastings. He dangles a prize before his guests, and in doing so, he stirs their desires. their fears. It is a dangerous game, no? For when desires are stirred, the heart becomes reckless. The night deepened, the yacht rocking gently on the waves. Hastings retired to their cabin, but sleep eluded him. The faces of the guests, their guarded words, beauty, was a stage, and the players upon it were poised for a drama that would soon unfold. Little did he know that the curtain was about to rise on a tragedy that would test even Poirot's formidable intellect. Chapter 2. The Shadow of Death. The sapphire yacht glided through the night, its engines a low hum beneath the lapping of waves against its hull. The dawn of the second day broke softly, with a pale pink sky stretching over the Devon coast, yet an air of disquiet hung over the vessel. Captain Arthur Hastings, roused early by the gentle sway of the yacht, dressed quietly so as not to disturb Hercule Poirot, who slumbered with the precision of a man who valued order even in repose. Hastings stepped onto the deck, hoping the sea air might dispel the unease that had settled in his chest since the previous evening's dinner. The deck was deserted save for a solitary figure. Dr. Harold Wentworth, leaning against the rail, his pipe sending faint curls of smoke into the morning mist. His face, usually composed, bore a shadow of preoccupation. Hastings, ever genial, approached. "Early riser, doctor? Couldn't sleep either?" Wentworth turned, his eyes briefly guarded before softening. "The sea has a way of stirring the mind, Captain. I find it restless this morning." Hastings nodded, unsure whether Wentworth referred to the sea or himself. Their conversation drifted to banalities, the weather, the yacht's luxurious fittings, but Hastings sensed a reticence in the doctor, as if his thoughts were elsewhere. Before he could probe further, a piercing scream shattered the morning's calm, echoing from the direction of the upper deck. Hastings and Wentworth exchanged a glance and hurried toward the sound, their footsteps clattering on the polished teak. They reached the stern where Clara Duval stood, her hands pressed to her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. At her feet lay Sir Reginald Ashburn, his body crumpled on the deck, a dark stain spreading across his white shirt. A small, ornate dagger protruded from his chest, its handle gleaming in the morning light. The mahogany box from the dining saloon, now unlocked, rested beside him, its lid ajar to reveal an empty velvet lining. "Good Lord!" Hastings exclaimed, kneeling beside the body. He pressed a hand to Sir Reginald's wrist, finding no pulse. "He's dead! Murdered!" Wentworth, his physician's instincts taking over, crouched to examine the wound. "Stabbed through the heart," he murmured, his voice steady but grim. "Death would have been near instantaneous. This dagger, it's not a common weapon." Clara, trembling, managed to speak. I came out for air and found him like this. That box, it was locked last night, wasn't it? Oh, mon Dieu, who could have done this?" Others began to gather, drawn by the commotion. Lady B whispered, her voice breaking. Leonard Grayson, disheveled in a hastily donned dressing gown, pushed forward, his expression a mix of shock and calculation. Mrs. Evelyn Marlowe, her usual poise abandoned, gasped and fanned herself, while Victor Crane, the journalist, hovered at the edge, his notebook already in hand. Hastings, his military training asserting itself, took charge. "Nobody touch anything. We must preserve the scene until the authorities can be notified. Dr. Wentworth, can you confirm the time of death?" Wentworth, after a brief examination, replied, "Rigor is only just beginning. I'd estimate he died between 2 and 4 this morning." The yacht's captain, a stout man named Harrow, appeared, his face pale. "I've radioed for the Coast Guard, but it'll be hours before they reach us. We're 20 miles out." As the guests murmured in distress, A familiar figure emerged from the crowd, Hercule Poirot. Immaculate despite the early hour, surveyed the scene with a calm that bordered on the uncanny. His eyes, sharp and unyielding, took in the body, the dagger, the open box, and the faces of the onlookers. "Mon Dieu," he said softly. "A tragedy has struck. But fear not, mes amis. Hercule Poirot is here, and the truth, it will not remain hidden." Hastings, relieved by his friend's presence, recounted the discovery. Poirot listened, his head tilted slightly, his fingers brushing his mustache. "And you, Mademoiselle Duval," he said, turning to Clara. "You saw nothing before this scream, no one near the body?" Clara shook her head, her eyes brimming. "Nothing, Monsieur Poirot. I was alone when I found him." Poirot knelt beside the body, his movements precise. He examined the dagger without touching it, noting its intricate handle, engraved with a serpent motif. "A curious weapon," he murmured, "not one carried lightly. And this box?" He peered into the empty interior, his brow furrowing. "What was its purpose, I wonder? Sir Reginald guarded it closely last night." Lady Beatrice, her voice trembling, spoke up. "It was a family heirloom. He said it contained something valuable, but he never told me what." Poirot's gaze lingered on her, as if weighing her words against some inner scale. "Merci, madame. We shall speak more, I think." He rose, addressing the group. "This is a matter most grave. A man is dead, and one among us is responsible. Until the authorities arrive, I, Hercule Poirot, will conduct an investigation. No one is to leave the yacht, and no one is to touch to guard the body." Poirot, with Hastings at his side, began his inquiries. He requested a passenger manifest and a layout of the yacht, which Hero provided promptly. The Sapphire yacht, Poirot noted, had 3 decks. The upper deck, where the body was found. The main deck, with the dining saloon and guest cabins. And the lower deck, housing the crew and engines. Sir Reginald's cabin was on the main deck, near those of his wife and Grayson. Poirot's first interview was with Lady Beatrice, who sat in the saloon, her hands clasped tightly. "Madame," Poirot began, his tone gentle yet probing, "your husband spoke of a legacy last night. What did he mean?" Lady Beatrice hesitated, her eyes darting to the window. He was planning to sell part of his business. A merger with Mr. Grayson's firm. He said it would secure our future, but he was vague about the details. "And the box," Poirot pressed. "What was its contents?" "I don't know," she admitted. "He was secretive about it. He said it was a surprise even to me." Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. "And where were you between 2 and 4 this morning?" "In my cabin," she said quickly. "I took a sleeping draught after dinner." I heard nothing. The interviews continued, each guest offering alibis that Poirot noted with care. Grayson claimed to have been in his cabin, reading financial reports. Clara said she had retired early, exhausted from the evening's socializing. Wentworth had been in the ship's small library, reviewing medical journals. Mrs. Marlowe insisted she had slept soundly, while Crane, the journalist, admitted to wandering the decks until midnight, seeking inspiration for an article. Hastings, watching Poirot's methodical questioning, marveled at his friend's ability to discern truth from evasion. "What do you make of it, Poirot?" he asked, as they paused in their cabin. "Everyone has an alibi, but that dagger, it's so distinctive. Surely it points to someone." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "The dagger, Hastings. It is a clue, but not the only one. The box, empty now, tells a story of its own. Why was it opened? What was taken? And why was Sir Reginald alone on the upper deck at such an hour? These are the questions we must answer." As the morning wore on, the yacht became a pressure cooker of suspicion. The guests avoided each other's gazes, their polite faces shrink under the weight of Sir Reginald Ashbourne's murder. By mid-morning, the air in the dining saloon was thick with tension, the guests' faces etched with unease as they awaited further developments. The Coast Guard was still hours away, and the yacht, anchored in the restless sea, felt like a gilded cage. Captain Arthur Hastings, seated near a porthole, watched the waves churn, their rhythm a stark contrast to the chaos aboard. Hercule Poirot, however, was the eye of the storm, calm, methodical, and utterly focused. His presence, announced by the soft click of his polished shoes on the teak floor, drew every eye as he entered the saloon. "Monsieur Poirot," Lady Beatrice said, her voice strained. "Surely you can tell us something. Who could have done this to my husband?" Her hands twisted a lace handkerchief, betraying her agitation. Poirot raised a hand, his gesture both reassuring and commanding. "Madame, mes amis, patience is required. The truth, it is like a fine wine. It must be savored slowly to appreciate its complexity. Hercule Poirot has begun his work, and already the pieces of this puzzle, they begin to take shape." Hastings, accustomed to Poirot's flair for the dramatic, suppressed a smile. Yet he knew that beneath the theatrics lay a mind sharper than any blade. Poirot had spent the morning inspecting the crime scene with meticulous care, noting the position of Sir Reginald's body, the angle of the dagger, and the precise placement of the empty mahogany box. He had also requested the ship's log from Captain Harrow, who confirmed that no one had left or boarded the yacht since it set sail. The murderer, it seemed, was among them. Poirot addressed the group, his voice clear and deliberate. "Mesdames et messieurs, a crime has been committed, and it is no ordinary crime. Sir Reginald was struck down with a dagger of unusual design, and the box he guarded so closely is now empty. These are not accidents. No, they are deliberate acts. I ask that you cooperate fully. Each of you will speak with me, and each word, each glance, will be weighed by Hercule Poirot." Leonard Grayson, his face flushed with impatience, leaned forward. "This is absurd. We're all respectable people, not criminals. Why aren't you questioning the crew? Some deckhand could have done this." Poirot's eyes narrowed, though his smile remained polite. "Monsieur Grayson, the crew, they are under the command of Captain Harrow, who assures me of their loyalty. But rest assured, heard nothing, saw nothing." Poirot tilted his head, studying Grayson's flushed cheeks. "And your business with Sir Reginald? He spoke of a merger last night. Was it amicable?" Grayson hesitated, his fingers drumming the armrest. "It was business, Poirot. Reginald wanted to sell his textile mills to my firm. We were close to an agreement, but there were details to settle." "Details," Poirot repeated softly. And these details, they were worth a man's life, perhaps? Grayson's eyes flashed. That's preposterous. I had no reason to harm him. The deal would have made us both richer. Poirot nodded, dismissing him with a wave. We shall see, monsieur. We shall see. Next came Clara Duval, her sapphire gown replaced by a somber black dress, though her beauty remained undimmed. She sat with studied grace, her hands folded in her lap. Monsieur Poirot, she began, her French accent lilting. I am devastated. Sir Reginald was so kind to me, a true patron of the arts. Poirot's smile was gentle but probing. Mademoiselle, you found the body, oui? Tell me, what drew you to the upper deck at such an early hour? Clara's eyes flickered, but her voice remained steady. I couldn't sleep. The sea air, it calms me. I went for a walk and there he was. A tear glistened, though it did not fall. That dagger. It was horrible. And you saw no one else? Poirot pressed. No movement, no sound? Nothing, she said firmly. Only poor Sir Reginald and that dreadful box. Poirot made a note, his pencil moving with precision. The box, mademoiselle. Did you know its contents? Clara shook her head. He never spoke of it, only that it was important. The interviews continued, each guest offering a piece of the puzzle. Dr. Wentworth, calm and analytical, confirmed his alibi in the library, though he admitted to hearing footsteps on the deck around midnight. Mrs. Evelyn Marlowe, her gossip sharpened by fear, hinted at tensions between Sir Reginald and his wife, though she offered no specifics. Beatrice was always so reserved, she said, her eyes gleaming. But you could see she was unhappy. Victor Crane, the journalist, was the last to be questioned. His boyish enthusiasm had dimmed, replaced by a nervous energy. I was up late, writing, he said. I saw nothing unusual, but, well, I heard Sir Reginald arguing with someone around 11. I couldn't make out the words, but it was heated. Poirot's eyebrow. What was the point of the murder? Poirot tapped his temple. The little gray cells, they are at work. The box, it was not always empty, I think. Its contents, stolen or destroyed, are the key. And the dagger, it is no ordinary weapon. It speaks of intent, of passion. Leaving the study, Poirot and Hastings returned to the crime scene, now cordoned off by a crewman. Poirot examined the dagger again, noting its serpent motif and the faint initials R.A. engraved on the blade. Reginald Ashbourne, Poirot murmured. This was his own dagger, perhaps? A curious choice for a murderer. He paced the deck, reconstructing the scene in his mind. Sir Reginald, he comes here in the night, alone. Why? To meet someone? To guard the box? And the killer, they strike swiftly with precision. But the box is opened, its contents gone. This is not a crime of impulse, Hastings. It is planned. Hastings, glancing at the gathering clouds, felt a chill. Planned by whom, Poirot? Everyone has an alibi. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Alibis, mon ami, are like mirrors. They reflect what we wish to see. But mirrors can be tilted, oui? We must look at the angles. As they returned to the saloon, Poirot requested a private word with Captain Harrow. Monsieur Decroux, have any been near the upper deck last night? Harrow shook his head. My men were below, except for the night watch, who reported nothing unusual. I trust them implicitly. Poirot nodded, though his eyes suggested he trusted no one. And the ship safe? Sir Reginald, he may have stored something there. Harrow led them to his office, where a small safe was embedded in the wall. He opened it, revealing only routine documents. Sir Reginald never mentioned using it, Harrow said. Poirot's disappointment was fleeting. No matter. The truth it hides elsewhere. As the day wore on, the guests grew restless, their conversations hushed and suspicious. Lady Beatrice withdrew to her cabin, claiming a headache, while Grayson and Clara exchanged sharp words over lunch. Mrs. Marlowe whispered to Crane, her eyes darting to Poirot, who pretended not to notice. Wentworth, ever reserved, studied a medical text, though his fingers betrayed a nervous tremor. Hastings, watching it all, leaned close to Poirot. They're all on edge. Do you think the killer's feeling the pressure? Poirot's eyes gleamed. The killer, Hastings, is always watching. They see Hercule Poirot, and they know the net tightens. But they will make a mistake, oh yes, they will. And when they do, I shall.
Approaching storm hummed with nervous energy as the afternoon unfolded. The guests, confined to the main deck under Captain Harrow's orders, exchanged furtive glances, their polite facades fraying like old silk. Hercule Poirot, undeterred by the rising tension, moved among them with the precision of a watchmaker, his questions as sharp as the serpent-engraved dagger that had ended Sir Reginald Ashbourne's life. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever at his side, marveled at Poirot's ability to probe without seeming to accuse, to observe without betraying his own conclusions. The dining saloon, where lunch had been served in strained silence, became Poirot's stage. He had requested the guests remain after the meal, and now they sat, their coffee cooling, as he stood at the head of the table, his small frame commanding the room. Mesdames et messieurs, he began, his voice a soft but unyielding melody. A crime has been committed, and the truth, it hides among us. Hercule Poirot does not believe in coincidence, nor in luck. Every detail, every word, it matters. I ask now for your candor, for the little gray cells. They are listening. Hastings, seated near Lady Beatrice, noted her pallor, her fingers twisting the same lace handkerchief from earlier. Her eyes, red-rimmed, avoided Poirot's gaze. Across the table, Leonard Grayson's impatience was palpable, his foot tapping beneath the cloth. Clara Duval, her composure regained, sat with a studied calm, while Dr. Harold Wentworth's fingers rested lightly on a medical journal, as if anchoring himself to reason. Mrs. Evelyn Marlowe, her lips pursed, seemed eager to speak, while Victor Crane, the journalist, scribbled furiously, his eyes darting between Poirot and the others. Poirot began with Lady Beatrice, his tone gentle but insistent. Madame, you have told me you took a sleeping draught last night, yet you heard nothing, no footsteps, no voices, despite your cabin's proximity to the upper deck. Lady Beatrice's hand stilled. I was deeply asleep, Monsieur Poirot. The draught is strong. I woke only when Clara screamed. Poirot nodded, his eyes never leaving her face. And your husband, he did not confide in you about the contents of the mahogany box. A wife, she often knows her husband's heart, no? Her lips trembled. Reginald was private about his business. He said the box held something valuable, but he never showed me. I assumed it was documents, perhaps, for the merger with Mr. Gray. Reginald had something in that box. It wasn't part of our negotiations. Hastings, watching closely, noted a flicker of unease in Grayson's eyes. Poirot, too, seemed to sense it, but he moved on, addressing Clara Duval. Mademoiselle, you found the body at what time precisely? Clara's voice was steady, her accent a soft lilt. It was just before 6, Monsieur Poirot. I couldn't sleep, so I went to the upper deck for air. I saw him and the box open beside him. And you touched nothing? Poirot asked, his gaze intent. Nothing, she replied, meeting his eyes. I screamed and ran for help. Poirot's fingers brushed his mustache, a gesture Hastings knew signaled deep thought. The dagger, mademoiselle. You recognized it, perhaps? It is most distinctive. Clara hesitated, her fingers tightening on her coffee cup. I may have seen it in Reginald's cabin. He showed me some of his collection once, a few antique weapons, but I'm not certain. The room stirred at this, Mrs. Marlowe's eyes narrowing. A collection. How convenient, she muttered, loud enough to be heard. Poirot ignored the interruption, turning to Dr. Wentworth. Monsieur le Docteur, you were in the library until late, oui? Yet you heard footsteps on the deck. Can you describe them? Wentworth's brow furrowed, his voice measured. They were quick, uneven. Around midnight, I'd say. I thought it was a crewman, perhaps, but I didn't investigate. Poirot nodded, then addressed Mrs. Marlowe. Madame, you have a keen eye for the social currents. What have you observed among this company? Mrs. Marlowe, flattered by the attention, leaned forward. Well, Monsieur Poirot, I've seen plenty. Beatrice was always tense around Reginald, hardly the devoted wife. And Clara, well, she's charming, but she's an actress, isn't she? All performance. As for Mr. Grayson, he's been snapping at everyone, like a man with something to hide. Grayson's face reddened, but Poirot raised a hand to silence his retort. Merci, madame. Your observations, they are most illuminating. He turned to Victor Crane. And you, monsieur, you heard an argument at 11. Can you recall anything more? A voice, perhaps? Crane, nervous under Poirot's scrutiny, shook his head. It was muffled, through the walls. I couldn't tell who it was, only that it was heated. I thought it best to stay out of it. Poirot paced slowly, his hands clasped behind his back. A picture emerges where Sir Reginald had fallen, his eyes tracing invisible lines. Hastings, he said, observe the deck. The blood, it pools here, but there is a faint smear, oui? As if something was dragged. Hastings squinted, barely discerning the mark. The box, perhaps? Or the body? Perhaps, Poirot replied. But the body, it was not moved after death. Dr. Wentworth was clear. The smear, it suggests haste, carelessness. The killer, they were not so calm as they wished to appear. Poirot examined the mahogany box again, its empty velvet lining mocking their efforts. This box, Hastings, it is the heart of the mystery. What did it hold? A document, a jewel? Something worth killing for, certainly. They returned to their cabin, where Poirot spread out his notes and the yacht's layout. He marked the positions of each guest's cabin, the dining saloon, and the upper deck. The killer, they had opportunity, he said, tapping the map. The upper deck is accessible from the main staircase,
but also from a service ladder near the crew quarters. Anyone could have slipped out unseen. Hastings frowned. But the alibis, Poirot, they all account for their time. Alibis, Poirot said, his voice sharp, are only as strong as the truth behind them. Lady Beatrice's sleeping draft, it may be a lie. Grayson's papers, they could be a fiction. Clara's early walk, Wentworth's library, Crane's writing, all may conceal the truth. We must dig deeper. As evening approached, Poirot requested a private meeting with Captain Harrow. Monsieur the dagger, it bears the initials R.A. Is it known to you? Harrow shook his head. Sir Reginald had a collection of curios in his cabin. Knives, pistols, that sort of thing. I never paid much attention. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Then we must see this collection. Harrow led them to Sir Reginald's cabin, a luxurious suite with mahogany paneling and a glass cabinet displaying several antique weapons. One slot, meant for a dagger, was empty. This, Poirot said, pointing to the gap, is where our murder weapon rested. The killer, they chose it deliberately. Hastings, struck by a thought, said, But why use Sir Reginald's own dagger? It's so personal. Exactly, mon ami, Poirot replied. It is a message, a symbol. The killer, they wish to say something with this act. Sapphire Yacht had transformed the once tranquil vessel into a restless beast, its timbers creaking under the assault of wind and waves. By late afternoon, the guests, confined to the dining saloon by Captain Harrow's orders, wore their nerves as openly as their formal attire. The air was heavy with the scent of rain and suspicion, and the murder of Sir Reginald Ashbourne hung over them like a pall. Hercule Poirot, however, remained a beacon of calm, his meticulous demeanor unshaken as he continued his investigation. Captain Arthur Hastings, seated beside him, felt the weight of the day's revelations, his mind tangled with the alibis and half-truths they had uncovered. Poirot had spent the morning cross-referencing the guests' statements, his notebook filled with precise notations of times, places, and inconsistencies. Now, as the rain drummed against the portholes, he stood before the assembled company, his green eyes scanning each face with the precision of a jeweler inspecting a flawed gem. Mesdames et messieurs, he began, his voice cutting through the murmurs. We are at a juncture most critical. A man is dead, his life taken by one among us. The police, they will come. But until then, Hercule Poirot seeks the truth, and the truth, it is often obscured by shadows, by what you English call the red herring. Hastings, familiar with Poirot's methods, knew this was no idle speech. Poirot was setting a stage, baiting the guilty to reveal themselves through discomfort or contradiction. The guests shifted uneasily, their eyes darting to one another. Lady Beatrice, her face pale, clutched her handkerchief, while Leonard Grayson's scowl deepened. Clara Duval, her composure a fragile mask, toyed with a strand of her hair, and Dr. Harold Wentworth's fingers tightened on his coffee cup. Mrs. Evelyn Marlowe, ever eager for drama, leaned forward, while Victor Crane's pen hovered over his notebook, poised for a revelation. Poirot's gaze settled on Grayson. Monsieur Grayson, you have spoken of your business with Sir Reginald. A merger, oui? Yet you were seen arguing with him last night, before his death. Monsieur Crane overheard raised voices. Was this a disagreement over profits? Grayson's face reddened, his voice sharp. Nonsense. I told you, our deal was nearly settled. If I argued with Reginald, it was about minor details, nothing worth killing over. Crane must have misheard. Crane, startled by the accusation, stammered, I know what I heard, Mr. Grayson. It was loud, angry. I couldn't make out the words, but it was no friendly chat. Poirot's smile was faint, but piercing. Merci, Monsieur Crane. The ears, they do not— Cabin was locked at night. Only I had a key, as his wife, but I swear I never touched his collection. Clara Duval's eyes widened. You're not suggesting Beatrice did this? That's absurd. She loved Reginald. Mrs. Marlowe's lips curled in a knowing smirk. Love, my dear. Love can hide many sins. I've seen how distant they were. Beatrice barely looked at him during dinner. Lady Beatrice's eyes flashed with indignation. How dare you? My marriage was private, not fodder for your gossip. Poirot raised a hand, silencing the outburst. Madame Marlowe, your observations, they are noted. But let us not leap to conclusions. The dagger, it was not merely taken, it was chosen. This suggests familiarity, intimacy. Who among you knew Sir Reginald's habits, his possessions? Dr. Wentworth cleared his throat, his voice calm but firm. I visited his cabin once, at his invitation. He showed me his collection, pistols, swords, that dagger, but I had no reason to take it. Poirot's eyes gleamed. And yet, Doctor, you were awake late in the library, near the main staircase. A short walk to the upper deck, no? Wentworth's composure faltered, his fingers twitching. I was reading, Poirot. I told you. I heard footsteps, but I didn't investigate. I'm a physician, not a detective. Poirot nodded, turning to Clara. Mademoiselle Duval, you too knew of the dagger. You said Sir Reginald showed it to you. When was this? Clara hesitated, her fingers smoothing her dress. A few weeks ago, in London. He invited me to his home to discuss a play he wished to fund. He was proud of his collection, that's all. Grayson snorted. A play? Is that what he called it? Everyone knows you were cozying up to him, Clara. Looking for a rich patron, no doubt. Clara's cheeks flushed, but her voice was icy. You're crude, Mr. Grayson. Sir Reginald was a gentleman, unlike some. The room crackled with tension, and Hastings, watching closely, sensed Poirot was deliberately stirring the pot. By casting suspicion on Grayson and Clara, he was flushing out reactions, seeking the slip that would betray the guilty. But Poirot's next move surprised even Hastings. He produced a small object from his pocket. A pearl earring, its luster dulled by a faint smear of blood. This, Poirot said, holding it aloft, was found near the body, his pen scratching like an accusation. Lady Beatrice's voice rose, desperate. I didn't kill him. I swear it. Someone must have taken it, someone trying to frame me. Poirot's expression was unreadable. Frame you, madame? Perhaps. Or perhaps the earring tells a truth you do not wish to share. We shall see. He dismissed the group, but the seed of suspicion had been planted. As the guests dispersed, Hastings followed Poirot to their cabin, where he spread out his notes and the yacht's layout. That earring, Poirot, Hastings said. It's a damning clue. Do you really think Lady Beatrice is involved? Poirot's smile was enigmatic. The earring, Hastings. It is a red herring. Or perhaps not. It points to Lady Beatrice too obviously, no? The killer. They wish us to look one way while they hide in another. But Hercule Poirot, he sees through such tricks. Hastings frowned. So you don't believe her story about losing it? I believe nothing until it is proven, Poirot replied, tapping his temple. The earring, it was placed deliberately, I think. The blood, it is too convenient. We must ask, why was it left there? To accuse or to distract? Poirot turned to the yacht's layout, marking the position of the earring's discovery. The rope, it was near the service ladder, oui? This suggests the killer may have come from below, not from the main deck. We must speak to the crew again. They sought out Captain Harrow, who was overseeing repairs to a storm-damaged railing. Monsieur Harrow, Poirot said, the service ladder, who uses it? Harrow wiped his brow. Mostly the crew, stewards, engineers. The guests rarely go below. It's narrow, not meant for passengers. And last night, Poirot pressed, was it guarded? Harrow shook his head. The night watch was on the bridge. The ladder's out of sight. Someone could have used it, I suppose. Poirot nodded, his mind racing. Merci, Capitaine. You have been most helpful. Back in their cabin, Poirot paced, his hands clasped behind his back. The ladder, Hastings. It changes everything. The killer. They could have avoided the main deck where alibis are claimed. We must re-examine the timeline. Hastings, struggling to keep up, said, but the earring, it's still the strongest clue. If it's not Lady Beatrice's doing, who else could have planted it? Poirot's eyes gleamed. That, mon ami, is the question. The killer. They are clever, but they overreach. They wish us to chase the obvious, Grayson's argument, Beatrice's earring, while the truth lies deeper. The box, the dagger.
Chapter 6. A Clue in Detail. The storm that lashed the Sapphire yacht had subsided by evening, leaving a bruised sky and a sea that churned uneasily, as if mirroring the turmoil aboard. The guests confined to the main deck moved like actors in a play they did not understand, their glances sharp with suspicion. Hercule Poirot, however, was in his element, his mind a crucible where facts and inconsistencies were melted down to reveal the truth. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever his faithful shadow, followed him through the yacht's polished corridors, marveling at the detective's relentless focus. The discovery of Lady Beatrice's earring, smeared with blood, had sent ripples of doubt through the company, but Poirot was not content to chase such an obvious clue. He sought something subtler, a detail that would pierce the veil of deception. In the quiet of their cabin, Poirot spread out his notes, the yacht's layout, and a rough sketch of the crime scene. His pencil hovered over the map, marking the spot where Sir Reginald's body had been found, the mahogany box beside it, and the coil of rope that had concealed the earring. Hastings, he said, his voice low and deliberate. The earring, it is too convenient, too theatrical. The killer wishes us to look at Lady Beatrice, but Hercule Poirot, he looks elsewhere. There is a detail, mon ami, that we have overlooked. A gesture, a moment, a contradiction. Hastings, puzzled, leaned over the map. What sort of detail, Poirot? We've questioned everyone, examined the scene, checked the alibis. What's left? Poirot's eyes gleamed, a faint smile playing at his lips. The little gray cells, they notice what others miss. Come, we return to the upper deck. There is something I must see again. The crime scene, still cordoned off by Captain Harrow's crew, was bathed in the dim glow of deck lights.
The rain had washed away some of the blood, but the dagger remained, its serpent motif glinting ominously. Poirot knelt, his fingers hovering over the deck, tracing an invisible path. "Observe, Hastings," he said, pointing to a faint scratch near the edge of the blood stain. "It is small, almost nothing, but it is not natural. The deck, it is polished daily, yet this mark remains. What caused it?" Hastings squinted, barely discerning the scratch. "A shoe, perhaps? Or something dropped?" Poirot shook his head. "Non, mon ami. It is too precise, too angular. It is the mark of metal, I think. A tool, perhaps, used to pry open the upper deck, opened without force. This suggests someone with knowledge, someone who knew where to find the box and how to open it." They returned to the main deck, where Poirot requested a private meeting with Captain Harrow. "Monsieur," Poirot said, "the crew, have any reported missing tools? A small pick, perhaps, or a fine instrument?" Harrow, his brow furrowed, shook his head. "Nothing reported, but I'll check with the engineer. Tools go missing sometimes, small things, easily overlooked." Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. "Merci. And one more thing. The night watch. You said they saw nothing, but were they near the service ladder at all?" Harrow hesitated. "The watch was on the bridge, forward of the upper deck. The ladder's aft, out of their line of sight. I suppose someone could have used it unnoticed." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Most interesting. The ladder. It is a shadow in this mystery, always just out of sight." Back in the saloon, the guests were gathered for dinner, though appetites were scant. The air was thick with unspoken accusations, and Poirot's presence did little to ease the tension. He took his seat, his demeanor serene, but Hastings knew his friend was observing every gesture, every glance. As the soup was served, Poirot turned to Clara Duval, who sat opposite him, her face pale but composed. "Mademoiselle," he said, his tone light, "you are an actress, oui? You understand the art of timing, of precision. Tell me, when you found the body, was the dagger still warm from the killer's hand?" Clara Spoon paused, her eyes meeting Poirot's. "Warm? I didn't touch it, Monsieur Poirot. I was too shocked. I only saw it there, in his chest." Poirot nodded, as if satisfied, but Hastings caught the glint in his eye. He was testing her, probing for a reaction. Next, he addressed Dr. Wentworth. "Monsieur le Docteur, you are a man of science. The dagger's wound. It was precise, was it not? A single thrust, straight to the heart. This requires skill, perhaps?" Wentworth's fingers tightened on his napkin. "It was clean, yes, but anyone with basic knowledge of anatomy could manage it. The heart is not so hard to find." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "And yet, the choice of weapon, it speaks of intent. A gun would be quicker, non? But a dagger, it is personal, intimate." Mrs. Evelyn Marlowe, unable to resist, leaned forward. "Intimate, you say? That points to someone close to him, doesn't it? Beatrice, perhaps? Or even Clara? She was awfully fond of Reginald." Clara's eyes flashed. "That's a lie. I respected so—" Fidgeted with his glasses. "Well, I did notice something odd. When I was on the deck around 10, I saw a light flicker in Sir Reginald's cabin window. Like a candle, maybe, or a match. But it went out quickly." Poirot's eyebrows rose. "A light, you say? Most interesting. And you told no one?" Crane flushed. "I thought it was nothing, just someone moving about." Poirot turned to Lady Beatrice. "Madame, your cabin is next to your husband's. Did you see this light?" Lady Beatrice shook her head, her voice faint. "No, I was asleep. The draught, you see." Poirot's gaze lingered on her, then moved to Grayson. "And you, monsieur? Your cabin is also near. A light, a sound, anything?" Grayson's jaw tightened. "I told you I was reading. I saw nothing." The dinner continued, but the atmosphere grew colder, the guests' words clipped and cautious. After the meal, Poirot and Hastings retired to their cabin, where Poirot paced, his mind alight. This scratch.
The lock, the light, he murmured. These are the details, Hastings. They tell a story the killer does not wish us to hear. Hastings, struggling to keep up, said, The light in the cabin. Could it have been the killer, searching for the box? Perhaps, Poirot replied. Or perhaps it was Sir Reginald himself, preparing for his midnight rendezvous. But the scratch on the deck, the opened lock, these suggest planning, not impulse. The killer, they knew what they sought. Poirot sat, sketching a timeline on a fresh sheet. At 10, a light in the cabin. At 11, an argument overheard by Crane. At midnight, footsteps heard by Wentworth. Between 2 and 4, the murder, and the earring placed to mislead. The killer, they are weaving a web, but it is not perfect. Hastings frowned. But who, Poirot? Everyone's alibi holds, more or less. And the crew, they seem loyal. Poirot's smile was faint. Loyalty, Hastings. It is a mask like any other. Tomorrow we speak to the crew again, and we search the cabins. The truth, it hides in the details. As the yacht rocked gently in the post-storm calm, Hastings felt the weight of the mystery deepen. Poirot, his eyes bright with purpose, was closing in on the truth. But the path was fraught with shadows, and the killer, watching from among them, was growing desperate. Chapter 7. More lies surface. The sapphire yacht, though steadied by the calming sea, seemed to pulse with a quiet menace as the third day dawned. The storm had passed, leaving a sky of pale blue, but the air aboard was thick with unspoken.
Morning began with Poirot's request to search the guests' cabins, a task Captain Harrow reluctantly approved, provided Poirot and Hastings were accompanied by a crewman to ensure propriety. The guests, gathered in the dining saloon for breakfast, reacted with predictable unease. Leonard Grayson slammed his coffee cup down, his voice sharp. "This is an outrage. You're treating us like common criminals, Poirot." Poirot's smile was serene but unyielding. "Monsieur Grayson, a man is dead, struck by his own dagger. The truth, it does not respect rank or reputation. If you are innocent, you have nothing to fear from Hercule Poirot." Lady Beatrice, her face pale, clutched her shawl. "But my personal things, it's so invasive." Poirot inclined his head. "Madame, I assure you, we seek only the truth. Your cooperation, it will hasten justice for your husband." Clara Duval, her eyes shadowed, said nothing, while Dr. Wentworth's calm nod suggested acquiescence, though his fingers betrayed a slight tremor. Mrs. Evelyn Marlowe, ever eager for drama, smirked. "Go ahead, Monsieur Poirot. I've nothing to hide, unlike some." Her glance at Clara was pointed, drawing a sharp intake of breath from the actress. Victor Crane, scribbling in his notebook, looked up. "Will you search the crew's quarters too? They had access to the service ladder, didn't they?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "A good question, Monsieur Crane. All possibilities they are considered. Now, if you please, remain here while we proceed." Accompanied by a young steward named Jenkins, Poirot and Hastings began with Sir Reginald's cabin. The room was a study in opulence, mahogany paneling, a four-poster bed, and the glass cabinet where the dagger had once rested. Poirot examined the cabinet, noting the empty slot. "The dagger! It was taken with purpose," he murmured. "But what else was here?" He moved to the desk, where papers were neatly arranged. Business contracts, letters, a ledger. One document caught his eye, a draft agreement for the merger with Grayson's firm, with a clause circled in red ink. "Regardez, Hastings," Poirot said, pointing. "A condition. Sir Reginald retained control of his mills unless certain assets were transferred." "What assets, I wonder?" Hastings frowned. "Could that be what was in the box?" "Perhaps," Poirot replied, his fingers brushing a locked drawer. "Jenkins, a key for this, s'il vous plaît." The steward hesitated, then produced a master key. The drawer revealed a small notebook, its pages filled with cryptic entries, dates, initials, and sums of money. "Crime scene. Interesting," he said, holding it up.
She said she lost it yesterday, yet here is its twin.
Hastings, puzzled, said, "But if she had the other, why not admit it? It makes her look guiltier." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Exactly, mon ami. The guilty, they do not always act logically, or perhaps the earring was taken to mislead us." Grayson's cabin yielded little. A briefcase of financial papers, a bottle of brandy, and a crumpled telegram dated 2 days prior. "Deal must close by weekend. Stakes higher than you know. H." Poirot pocketed it, his expression unreadable. Clara Duval's cabin was a contrast of glamour and disarray. Gowns strewn over chairs, a script annotated in her elegant hand. Poirot found a letter tucked beneath a mirror, addressed to Sir Reginald. It read, "My dearest, your support means everything. I promise discretion, but we must speak soon. C." Poirot's eyebrows rose. A liaison, perhaps? Or merely gratitude for his patronage? Dr. Wentworth's cabin was Spartan, with medical texts and a small case of instruments. A vial of sedative, half empty, caught Poirot's eye. "Similar to Lady Beatrice's sleeping draught," he noted. "Curious, no?" Mrs. Marlowe's cabin held a diary, its pages filled with gossip about the guests. An entry from the previous evening read, "Reginald and Grayson at odds, money or pride. Clara too cozy with R. Beatrice knows, I'm sure." Poirot closed it with a snap. "Madame Marlowe. She sees much, but understands little." Victor Crane's cabin was cluttered with notebooks and newspaper clippings. One article, circled in ink, detailed Sir Reginald's business empire, with a note scrawled in the margin. "Check offshore accounts." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Our young journalist, he digs deeper than he admits." The crew quarters, searched last, revealed nothing overt, though Jenkins mentioned a missing lock-picking tool from the engineer's kit. "It's small, sir," he said. "Could have been misplaced, but it's gone since yesterday." Back in their cabin, Poirot spread out the findings. The notebook, the telegram, the letter, the diary, and the earring. "The lies, Hastings, they multiply," he said. "Each guest hides something, affairs, debts, ambitions. The box, it held something that threatened one of them, perhaps all." Hastings, sorting through the clues, said, "That letter from Clara. It suggests she was more than a friend to Sir Reginald. Could she have been involved?" Poirot tapped the letter. "Possible, but too obvious. The killer, they wish us to chase such scandals. The notebook," aloft. "Monsieur Grayson, a question. This message, stakes higher than you know. Who is H, and what stakes?" Grayson's face paled, but he recovered quickly. "A business associate, nothing more. It's irrelevant to this." Poirot's smile was cold. "Irrelevant? No, monsieur. Nothing is irrelevant when the man lies dead." Clara, her voice sharp, interjected, "Why focus on Leonard? What about Beatrice's earring? Or that notebook you found? You're picking at us all, Poirot, but where's the proof?" Poirot turned to her, his gaze steady. "Proof, mademoiselle. It comes in time. But secrets, this surface now. You wrote to Sir Reginald, oui? A letter most intimate." Clara's cheeks flushed, but she held her ground. "It was gratitude, nothing more. He funded my career. Don't twist it into something sordid." Mrs. Marlowe's laugh was sharp. "Gratitude? Oh, Clara, we all saw how you looked at him. And Beatrice, you weren't blind, were you?" Lady Beatrice's eyes filled with tears. "Stop it. I loved my husband. Whatever you think, I didn't kill him." Wentworth's voice cut through the chaos. "Enough. We're tearing each other apart. Poirot, if you found something, tell us. Stop playing games." Poirot's expression softened, but his voice was firm. "Games, doctor? No. This is a puzzle, and each piece fits. The notebook, the telegram, the letter. They reveal motives, lies. The killer, they are among us, and they grow nervous." As the guests dispersed, Hastings followed Poirot to the deck where the stars glittered coldly. "You're pushing them hard, Poirot," he said. "Do you think the killer will crack?" Poirot's eyes reflected the starlight. The killer, Hastings. They are clever, but not infallible. Their lies, they pile like stones, and soon they will topple. Tomorrow, we set a trap. The yacht rocked gently, but the undercurrent of fear was palpable. Poirot, his mind a whirl of connections, knew the truth was near. But the killer, sensing the closing net, was preparing to strike again. Chapter 8. The Emotional Turning Point. The sapphire yacht, though steadied by a calm sea, seemed to tremble with the weight of secrets as the fourth day dawned. The air was crisp, the horizon clear, but the atmosphere aboard was anything but serene. The guests, worn by suspicion and Hercule Poirot's relentless probing, moved like shadows, their faces etched with fear and fatigue. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever attuned to the mood, felt the tension like a taut wire, ready to snap.
Poirot his coffee, while Clara Duval's forced brightness failed to mask her unease. Dr. Harold Wentworth, his calm demeanor fraying, glanced frequently at Poirot, as if anticipating the next blow. Mrs. Evelyn Marlowe, her gossip now tempered by fear, whispered to Victor Crane, whose notebook lay closed, his pen idle. Poirot, sensing the moment was ripe, rose from his seat, his voice cutting through the stillness. Mesdames et messieurs, the truth, it draws near. Hercule Poirot has seen the lies, the secrets, the hidden motives. Today we come to a turning point. One of you holds a truth that cannot be concealed much longer. I ask, nay, I implore you to speak before the net tightens further. The room stirred, eyes darting. Hastings, watching closely, saw Clara's hand tremble, her coffee cup rattling against its saucer. Lady Beatrice's lips parted, but no sound came. Grayson's jaw tightened, and Wentworth's fingers clenched his napkin. Mrs. Marlowe's eyes gleamed with anticipation, while Crane, for once, seemed reluctant to record the moment. It was Clara who broke the silence, her voice sharp with strain. Monsieur Poirot, you accuse us all, but what proof do you have? You wave that letter, that earring, that notebook, but it's all conjecture. I can't stand this constant suspicion. Poirot's gaze softened, but his tone was firm. Mademoiselle Duval, the heart, it speaks when the mind falters. Your letter to Sir Reginald, it was gratitude, you say, yet it hints at something deeper, non? A promise of discretion. What did you fear he would reveal? Clara's cheeks flushed, her eyes brimming. I told you it was about my career. He funded my play, but he wanted more. I refused him, gently, because I needed his support. That's all. The saloon gasped, Mrs. Marlowe's smirk widening. Lady Beatrice's face crumpled, her voice a whisper. You were involved with my husband? Clara's head snapped toward her. No, I swear, Beatrice, it was never like that. He pursued me, but I kept my distance. I wrote that letter to keep him at bay, to assure him I'd say nothing about his advances. Poirot's eyes narrowed. And yet, mademoiselle, you found his body at dawn, alone. Reginald's wandering eye. I knew about Clara, about his secrets, but I loved him, despite it all. I didn't kill him. I couldn't. Her voice broke, and she sank back into her chair, sobbing. Wentworth rose, his physician's instincts taking over, and placed a hand on her shoulder. Beatrice, you mustn't upset yourself. Poirot, this is cruel. She's grieving. Poirot's expression was unreadable. Grief, doctor, it is a powerful force, but so is guilt. Madame Ashbourne, you say you knew of your husband's indiscretions,
Did you know of the contents of the mahogany box?
Lady Beatrice's tears slowed, her eyes meeting Poirot's.
I told you he never showed me, but I heard him once, speaking to someone on the telephone, weeks ago. He mentioned a legacy, something he'd hidden for years, something that could ruin him if it came out.
Poirot's eyebrows rose.
Ruin him, madame? And who was he speaking to?
I don't know, she said, her voice faint. I only overheard. It was late, and he thought I was asleep. The revelation hung in the air, a new thread in the tangled web. Poirot turned to Grayson, whose face had paled.
Monsieur Grayson, you are to merge with Sir Reginald's firm. A legacy that could ruin him. Would it not affect your deal?
Grayson's voice was tight. I knew nothing of it. Our deal was about mills, profits, not some mysterious legacy. You're fishing, Poirot. Poirot's smile was faint.
Fishing, monsieur? No. I cast a net, and it catches what hides beneath this surface.
The breakfast ended abruptly, the guests dispersing to their cabins or the deck, their nerves frayed. Poirot and Hastings retreated to their cabin, where Poirot examined the notebook from Sir Reginald's desk, its cryptic entries taunting them.
These initials, CD, LG, HW, they match our guests, Poirot said. And the sums, they are large, irregular, payments perhaps, or debts. But to whom, and for what?
Hastings, poring over the telegram to Grayson, said, This H, could it be Wentworth? Or Harrow? It's too vague.
Vague, oui, Poirot replied, but deliberate. The killer, they hide in the shadows of these clues. Clara's confession, Beatrice's revelation, they are cracked.
No. Poirot thanked him and led Hastings to the upper deck, where the crime scene remained untouched. He knelt by the faint scratch on the deck, his fingers tracing its edge. This mark, Hastings, it is not just a tool. It is a clue to the killer's method. They came prepared, with knowledge of the box, the dagger, the yacht. Hastings, struck by a thought, said, What about the legacy Beatrice mentioned? If it could ruin Sir Reginald, maybe someone wanted to keep it hidden. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Précisément, mon ami. The box, it held this legacy, a document perhaps, or proof of a scandal. The killer took it, but they left the earring to point us elsewhere. They are clever, but not clever enough.
As evening fell, the guests gathered for a tense dinner, their eyes avoiding Poirot's. Clara, her face pale, spoke little, while Lady Beatrice's grief seemed to harden into resolve. Grayson's bluster had faded, replaced by a wary silence, and Wentworth's calm was strained. Mrs. Marlowe, undeterred, whispered to Crane, who nodded absently, his thoughts elsewhere. Poirot, watching them, leaned toward Hastings. The truth, it is close, mon ami. The emotional cracks, they widen. Tomorrow we set the trap, and the killer, they will step into it. The yacht sailed on, its lights a fragile beacon in the dark. The guests, bound by fear and secrets, felt the weight of Poirot's scrutiny, unaware that the next day would bring the mystery closer to its shattering conclusion.
Chapter 9. The Trap. The Sapphire yacht, now 5 days into its ill-fated voyage, sailed through a sea that gleamed under a tentative sun. But the brightness did little to dispel the gloom aboard. The guests, worn by days of suspicion and Hercule Poirot's unrelenting scrutiny, moved with the caution of prey sensing a predator. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever loyal, felt the tension like a tightening noose. Yet he trusted Poirot's genius to cut through the tangle of lies. Poirot himself, immaculate in his linen suit, was a study in calm purpose, his green eyes alight with the thrill of the chase. Today, he had declared, was the day to set a
a gambit to flush out the killer of Sir Reginald Ashbourne. The morning began in the dining saloon, where the guests gathered for a subdued breakfast. The clatter of cutlery was muted, the conversation sparse. Lady Beatrice, her grief now tempered by a steely resolve, sat rigidly, her eyes avoiding Clara Duval, who stared at her plate with a haunted expression. Leonard Grayson's usual bravado was absent, his face drawn, while Dr. Harold Wentworth's calm seemed a fragile mask, his fingers tapping restlessly. Mrs. Evelyn Marlowe, her gossip subdued by the weight of the moment, watched Poirot with barely concealed anticipation. And Victor Crane, his notebook open, scribbled with a nervous energy. Poirot rose, his presence commanding silence. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice a velvet blade. "The truth, it is near. The lies, the secrets, they crumble under the light of reason. Today, Hercule Poirot sets a trap, not for the innocent, but for the guilty. The killer, they are among us, and they will reveal themselves." A murmur rippled through the room, eyes darting. Hastings, seated beside Poirot, felt a prickle of excitement. He knew his friend's methods. Poirot's traps were as much psychological as physical, designed to provoke a reaction, a slip, a confession. Poirot continued, holding up the mahogany box, its empty velvet lining a silent accusation. This box, it held Sir Reginald's legacy, a secret worth killing for. The killer took its contents, but they left traces. The scratch on the deck, the picked lock, the bloodied earring, and now a new clue. He produced a small, folded piece of paper, its edges frayed. "This was found this morning, hidden in the service ladder's alcove. It is a fragment, torn from a larger document. It bears the words, 'Must be protected at all costs.'" The guests leaned forward, their faces a mix of curiosity and dread. Lady Beatrice's hand trembled, while Grayson's eyes narrowed. Clara's breath caught. "Once more, on this table. I will be elsewhere but the box. It will be watched. If the killer seeks to ensure their secret remains hidden, they will come for it." Grayson scoffed, his voice sharp. "This is nonsense, Poirot. You're baiting us, hoping someone will take the bait like a fool." Poirot's smile was serene. "Perhaps, monsieur. But the guilty, they are not always as clever as they believe. The box, it calls to them. They will act." The guests dispersed, their whispers buzzing like flies. Hastings followed Poirot to their cabin, where he revealed the truth. "The fragment, Hastings," he said, his voice low. "It is a fabrication, a piece of paper I prepared this morning. The trap, it is not the box, but the reaction. The killer, they will fear the fragment exists, and they will betray themselves." Hastings, impressed, said, "But what if no one takes the bait? What if they're too cautious?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "They will not be cautious, mon ami. The guilty, they are driven by fear. They will act, perhaps not to take the box, but to watch, to plan. And we will observe." The day passed in a haze of tension. Poirot spent the afternoon re-examining his notes, cross-referencing the notebook from Sir Reginald's desk with the guests' alibis. The cryptic entries, initials, sums, dates, suggested a web of financial dealings, perhaps blackmail. The telegram to Grayson, signed H, remained a puzzle. Harrow, Wentworth, or another, Poirot mused. The answer, it lies in the motive. Hastings, studying the yacht's layout, said, "The service ladder. It's still the key, isn't it? The killer used it to avoid the main deck." Poirot nodded. "Oui. And the missing lock-picking tool. It points to preparation. The killer, they knew the yacht, its routines. This is no outsider." As evening approached, Poirot and Hastings met with Captain Harrow to arrange the trap. Monsieur, Poirot said, tonight you will ensure the saloon is unguarded, but the corridors, they must be watched discreetly. Your most trusted man, he will report to me. Harrow, his face grim, agreed. I'll put Jenkins on it. He's sharp, doesn't miss much. At dinner, the atmosphere was electric, the guests' eyes darting to the mahogany box, now locked and placed prominently on a sideboard. Poirot, playing his part, announced his intention to retire early. The box, it is secure, he said. I trust no one will disturb it. His glance lingered on each guest, a silent challenge. After dinner, Poirot and Hastings retreated to a small alcove near the saloon, hidden behind a heavy curtain.
11. A soft creak broke the silence. Hastings peered through a slit in the curtain, his heart pounding. A figure, cloaked in shadow, slipped into the saloon. The dim light caught a glint of metal. A key, perhaps, or a tool. The figure approached the box, hesitating, then reached for it. Before they could touch it, Jenkins stepped forward, his lantern raised. "Who's there?" he called. The figure froze, then bolted, vanishing down the corridor. Jenkins gave chase, but returned moments later, breathless. "Lost them at the service ladder, sir. Too dark to see their face." Poirot emerged, his expression triumphant. "No matter, Jenkins. You have done well. The trap, it has sprung. The killer, they are rattled." Hastings, bewildered, said, "But we didn't catch them. They got away." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "No, Hastings. They revealed themselves. The way they moved, the choice of the ladder. It narrows the field. And their panic, it tells us they fear the box's secret." Back in their cabin, Poirot sketched a new timeline, marking the incident. The killer, they came not to steal, but to ensure the box held nothing. This confirms the legacy was taken, but they are not certain it is destroyed. Tomorrow, we confront them with this. Hastings, still reeling, said, "But who was it, Poirot? We couldn't see their face." Poirot tapped his temple. "The little gray cells. They see what the eyes cannot. The figure, they were slight, agile. Not Grayson, whose bulk would be unmistakable. Not Wentworth, whose height would betray him. Clara, Beatrice, or perhaps Crane. They fit the shadow." As the night deepened, the yacht seemed to hold its breath. The guests, unaware of the trap's success, slept fitfully, while Poirot, his mind alight, prepared for the final act. The killer, shaken by their near capture, was on the brink of a mistake, and Poirot was ready to seize it. Chapter 10. The Reveal. The sapphire yacht, now in its 6th day at sea, sailed under a sky of unbroken blue, but the clarity above belied the storm of suspicion below. The guests, worn to the bone by fear and Hercule Poirot's relentless pursuit of the truth, gathered in the dining saloon with the air of condemned prisoners awaiting judgment. Captain Arthur Hastings, seated beside Poirot, felt the weight of the moment, a culmination of days spent untangling lies, clues, and half-truths. Poirot, her throat, her eyes wide with dread. Leonard Grayson's scowl deepened, his fists clenched. Clara Duval's face was pale, her fingers gripping the edge of the table. Dr. Harold Wentworth's calm mask slipped, his brow furrowed, while Mrs. Evelyn Marlowe's eyes gleamed with anticipation. Victor Crane, his notebook open, leaned forward, pen poised.
Captain Harrow, standing by the door, watched with grim resolve. Poirot paced slowly, his hands clasped behind his back. Let us begin at the beginning. Sir Reginald, a man of wealth and secrets, is found dead on the upper deck, stabbed with his own dagger, the mahogany box beside him empty. The clues, they are many. A bloodied earring, a scratched deck, a picked lock, a cryptic notebook, a telegram, a letter, a light in the night. Each points to a truth, but also to deception. The killer, they are clever, but not cleverer than Hercule Poirot. He paused, his gaze sweeping the room. The earring, it belongs to Lady Beatrice, yet it is found with blood placed to accuse her. Too obvious, no? The scratch on the deck. It speaks of a tool, a lock picked with care. The notebook, with its initials and sums, suggests hidden dealings. The telegram to Monsieur Grayson, signed H, hints at stakes beyond business. Mademoiselle Duval's letter, it speaks of discretion, perhaps fear, and last night, a shadow in the saloon, fleeing down the service ladder. All these, they form a picture. Grayson's voice cut through the silence. Get to the point, Poirot. Who did it? Poirot's smile was serene. Patience, monsieur. The truth, it requires order. Let us consider the motive. Sir Reginald's legacy. It was no mere business deal. The box, it held a document. A will, perhaps, or proof of a scandal that could ruin someone. The killer, they took it to protect themselves, but they left traces. He turned to Lady Beatrice. Madame, you knew of your husband's secrets. You overheard his talk of a legacy that could ruin him. Was it a will, disinheriting you for another? Lady Beatrice's voice trembled. No. I loved him, despite his faults. I knew nothing of the box's contents. Poirot nodded, moving to Clara. Mademoiselle Duval, your letter to Sir Reginald, it was not mere gratitude, was it? He pursued you, and you feared his power. Did you kill to protect your future? Clara's eyes blazed.
Reginald. Poirot paused, letting the tension build. And yet, one of you lies. The killer, they used the service ladder. They picked the lock. They chose the dagger. A symbol of betrayal. They knew Sir Reginald's habits, his secrets. And last night they came for the box, fearing its secrets were not destroyed. He produced the fabricated fragment, holding it aloft. This, it was my trap. The killer, they believed it real, and they acted. The shadow in the saloon, it was slight, agile. Not Monsieur Grayson, not Dr. Wentworth. It was Mademoiselle Clara Duval. Clara gasped, her face ashen. Me? That's absurd. I was in my cabin. Poirot's voice was relentless. No, mademoiselle. You were seen, your silhouette unmistakable. The letter, it was not gratitude, but fear. Sir Reginald, he held something over you, a scandal perhaps from your past. The box contained proof, and you could not let it surface. Clara stood, her voice shrill. You're wrong. I didn't kill him. Poirot raised a hand. But you did, mademoiselle. Let us reconstruct. At 10, a light in Sir Reginald's cabin. You, searching for the box. At 11, you argued with him. As Monsieur Crane overheard, you took the dagger from his collection, knowing its significance. Between 2 and 4, you met him on the upper deck,
where he brought the box, perhaps to confront you. You struck, swift and sure, and took the document, the earring you planted to point to Lady Beatrice, whose grief you knew would distract. Clara's hands shook, her eyes darting. "This is madness. You have no proof." Poirot's smile was cold. "The proof, it is in the details. The scratch on the deck, made by your lock-picking tool stolen from the crew. The service ladder, your path to avoid detection. And last night, your panic when you thought the document remained. You burned it, oui, but you feared fragments survived." Clara's composure shattered, her voice a sob. "I had to. He was going to ruin me. The box held letters, mine, from years ago, to another man. Reginald found them, threatened to expose me unless I gave in. I couldn't let him destroy my career, my life." The saloon was silent, the guests frozen. Lady Beatrice's eyes widened, her grief mingling with shock. Grayson's scowl softened, Wentworth's face was grim, and Mrs. Marlowe's mouth hung open. Crane's pen flew across his notebook. Poirot's voice softened. "We're all along, didn't you?" he asked. Poirot's eyes were distant. "Not all along, mon ami, but the letter, the ladder, the panic, they pointed to her. The earring, it was too clumsy for her skill, yet she used it to mislead. The little gray cells, they see the pattern." Hastings shook his head. Poor Clara. To think she was driven to such desperation. Poirot's voice was quiet. "Desperation, Hastings? It is the shadow of ambition. She chose her path, and now she pays the price." The yacht sailed on, its course steady, but its heart heavy. The truth, so hard won, left a bitter taste. But Poirot, his work done, stood ready to face whatever mysteries the sea might bring next. Chapter 11. The Reflection. The sapphire yacht, its once gleaming decks now shadowed by the weight of tragedy, sailed steadily toward the Devon coast, where the Coast Guard awaited to take Clara Duval into custody. The sun hung low, casting a golden sheen across the sea, but the beauty of the scene could not dispel the somber mood aboard. The guests, their spirits battered by the revelation of Clara's guilt, moved with the quiet unease of those who had glimpsed the darkness of the human heart. Captain Arthur Hastings, standing at the rail, felt a mix of relief and melancholy, the resolution of the mystery leaving him drained yet awed by Hercule Poirot's genius. Poirot himself, his cream suit as immaculate as ever, stood beside him, his green eyes fixed on the horizon, his mind still turning over the intricacies of the case. The dining saloon, where the guests had gathered for a subdued luncheon, was a stark contrast to the lively gatherings of days past. Lady Beatrice, her grief now laced with betrayal, sat in silence, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Leonard Grayson, his bluster subdued, stared at his plate, while Dr. Harold Wentworth's calm demeanor seemed tinged with regret. Mrs. Evelyn Marlowe, for once without her sharp gossip, toyed with her napkin, and Victor Crane, his notebook closed, looked lost in thought. The absence of Clara, confined to her cabin under Captain Harrow's watch, hung over the room like a specter. Hastings, glancing at Poirot, broke the silence. "You did it, Poirot. You found the truth, as you always do. But it feels so heavy, doesn't it? Clara, of all people, I never would have guessed." Poirot's lips twitched in a faint smile, though his eyes remained distant. "Mon ami, the heart, it is a labyrinth. Clara Duval, she was not evil, but desperate. The little gray cells, they see the truth, but they cannot undo." Notebook, the letter, They were pieces, but it was the psychology that bound them. Clara, she acted from fear, from ambition, from a past she could not escape. Hastings nodded, his mind replaying the events. That letter she wrote to Sir Reginald, it was the key, wasn't it? It showed she was hiding something. Oui, Poirot replied, but not only the letter. The dagger, chosen from his own collection, it was a symbol, a message of betrayal. The earring, placed to accuse Lady Beatrice, it was a misstep, too obvious for her cleverness. And the service ladder, it was her path to secrecy, but also her undoing. The trap, it confirmed her guilt. Hastings frowned, a thought nagging at him. But the box, Poirot, what was in it? Those letters Clara mentioned, the ones that could ruin her, did she destroy them? Poirot's eyes gleamed. The letters, yes. She burned them, I believe, in the moment of panic after the murder. But the box, it held more than letters, it held power. Sir Reginald, he was a man who collected secrets, not just wealth. Those cryptic entries in his notebook, initials, sums, they suggest he held leverage over many, perhaps even others on this yacht. Hastings glanced back toward the saloon, where the guests remained. Do you think there's more to uncover? Grayson's telegram, Wentworth's sedative, Mrs. Marlowe's diary, they all hinted at secrets. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. The yacht, it is a microcosm of society, Hastings. Each person carries their shadows, their motives. But the murder, it was Clara's act alone. The others, they are guilty only of their own concealments, debts, desires, resentments. These we leave to their consciences. They walked to the stern, where the sea stretched endlessly, its surface calm but hiding depths unknown. Poirot leaned against the rail, his voice reflective. The human heart, mon ami, it is both fragile and fierce. Clara, she was driven by fear of ruin, by the need to protect her future. Yet in protecting herself, she destroyed another. This is the tragedy of crime. It ripples, wounding all it touches. Hastings, moved by Poirot's words, said, You always see so much, Poirot. Not just the clues, but the people behind them. How do you bear it, knowing so much about what drives us? Poirot's eyes softened, a rare glimpse of vulnerability. It is a burden, Hastings, but also a gift. To understand the heart, to see its contradictions, this is what allows Hercule Poirot to bring order from chaos. The little grace, Capitaine. Justice, it is its own reward. But I ask one favor. Ensure the guests are treated with care. They have suffered, each in their way. Harrow nodded, returning to his duties. Hastings watched him go, then turned to Poirot. What now, Poirot? Back to London? Another case? Poirot's smile was faint, but warm. Perhaps, mon ami. But first, a moment of quiet. The sea, it has a way of reminding us of our smallness, no? Let us savor it before the next puzzle calls. They stood in silence, the yacht's engines humming softly, the shore drawing nearer. The guests, still in the saloon, began to gather their belongings, their voices muted. Lady Beatrice, her grief now mingled with a quiet strength, approached Poirot as he re-entered the saloon. Monsieur Poirot, she said, her voice steady. You've given me answers, if not peace. Thank you. Poirot bowed slightly. Madame, peace will come in time. The heart, it heals, even from such wounds. As the Coast Guard's launch appeared on the horizon, the sapphire yacht seemed to exhale, its burden lightened but not erased. Poirot, his work complete, turned his gaze to the sea, his mind already drifting to the next challenge. Hastings, watching him, felt a surge of admiration for the little Belgian, whose intellect and compassion had once again brought light to the darkest of mysteries. The yacht docked, and as the guests prepared to disembark, Poirot slipped away, his steps light, his presence a quiet promise that no secret could hide from Hercule Poirot. The case of the sapphire yacht was closed, but its echoes would linger, a testament to the power of the little gray cells and the unyielding pursuit of truth. Chapter 12. The Aftermath. The sapphire yacht, now moored at the Torquay Quay, stood as a silent witness to the tragedy that had unfolded within its polished confines. The Coast Guard had boarded, their crisp uniforms a stark contrast to the disheveled guests, who gathered their belongings with the weariness of those who had endured a storm, far greater than the one that had battered the sea. Clara Duval, her hands bound, was escorted to the launch under the watchful eyes of Captain Harrow and his crew. The air was heavy with the scent of salt and finality, and the guests, though free to leave, moved as if tethered by the weight of what they had witnessed. Captain Arthur Hastings stood on the main deck, his gaze fixed on the horizon where sea met sky. The resolution of Sir Reginald Ashbourne's murder had brought clarity, but it had also left a hollow ache in his chest.
Hercule Poirot full of life. To think she was driven to such an act, it's hard to reconcile. Poirot nodded, his mustache twitching slightly. The heart, Hastings, it is a paradox. It can soar with ambition and plummet with fear. Mademoiselle Duval, she chose a path of desperation, and now she faces its consequences. But we have done our duty. The truth, it is our solace. The guests, one by one, began to disembark, their faces etched with a mix of relief and unease. Lady Beatrice, her shawl drawn tightly around her, paused to speak with Poirot. Her eyes, though still shadowed by grief, held a flicker of resolve. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice steady, "I cannot thank you enough. You've given me answers, however painful. I must rebuild now, for myself and for Reginald's memory." Poirot bowed, his expression gentle. "Madame, you are stronger than you know. The truth, it wounds, but it also frees. Go with courage." Leonard Grayson, his usual bluster subdued, offered a curt nod as he passed, his briefcase clutched tightly. "You're a clever man, Poirot," he said gruffly. "I didn't think you'd pull it off." Poirot's smile was polite but sharp. "Monsieur Grayson, the little gray cells, they do not fail. But I advise you, let your future dealings be as transparent as the sea." Dr. Harold Wentworth, his medical bag in hand, lingered a moment longer. "I underestimated you, Poirot," he admitted. "I thought this would end in chaos, but you brought order. I wish I'd seen Clara's pain sooner. Perhaps I could have helped." Poirot's gaze softened. "Doctor, the heart hides its wounds well. You heal the body. The mind, it is a harder task. Do not carry this guilt." Mrs. Evelyn Marlowe, her usual gossip silenced, offered a tight smile. "You've given me quite a story, Monsieur Poirot. I'll be the talk of London, though I suppose I'll keep this one quiet." Poirot's eyes twinkled. "A wise choice, madame. Some stories, they are better left untold." Victor Crane, his notebook tucked under his arm, approached last, his youthful energy dimmed. "Monsieur Poirot, I'm not sure what to write about this. It's all so tragic, but you're extraordinary." Poirot inclined his head. "Write the truth, Monsieur Crane, but with care.
The world, it needs heroes but also compassion. As the guests departed, Captain Harrow joined Poirot and Hastings on the deck. "The Coast Guard will handle Miss Duval," he said, his voice heavy. "They've taken the dagger, the box, all the evidence. This yacht..." Preparing to disembark. In their cabin, Poirot packed his notebook, the yacht's layout and his sketches, his movements precise. Hastings, watching him, said, "You know, Poirot, I thought the earring would lead us to Lady Beatrice. You saw through it from the start, didn't you?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Not from the start, mon ami, but early. The earring, it was too perfect, too placed. The killer, they wished to distract, but the little gray cells, they see the pattern. Clara's letter, her panic at the trap, these were the true clues." Hastings shook his head, marveling. "And the box's contents, those letters. You're sure she burned them?" "Oui," Poirot replied, closing his case. "She admitted as much in her confession. The letters, they were her past, a scandal, perhaps an affair, that Sir Reginald used to bind her. She killed to break free, but freedom, it comes at a cost." They stepped onto the quay, the bustle of Torquay a jarring contrast to the yacht's claustrophobic drama. The sea sparkled, indifferent to the tragedy it had hosted. Hastings, glancing back at the yacht, said, "It's strange, Poirot. We solved the crime, but it doesn't feel like a victory." Poirot's eyes were distant, fixed on the horizon. "Victory, Hastings, it is not always joy. To uncover the truth, it is to lift a veil, but what lies beneath is often pain. Yet we do this, you and I, because order must prevail over chaos. The little gray cells, they demand it." They boarded a waiting car, bound for the train to London. As the yacht receded into the distance, Hastings felt the weight of the case lift, though its echoes lingered. Poirot, beside him, hummed softly, his mind already drifting to the next puzzle. "What now, Poirot?" Hastings asked. "Arrest, perhaps?" Poirot's smile was warm, a rare glimpse of contentment. "Arrest, oui, but not for long. The world, it is full of mysteries, and Hercule Poirot, he is never far from their call." The car sped away, carrying them from the sea and its secrets, toward a future where new challenges awaited. The sapphire yacht, its story now a whispered legend, faded into the mist, but the memory of Poirot's triumph and the tragedy it uncovered would endure in the hearts of those who had sailed its doomed voyage. Chapter 13. Shadows of Secrets. The train from Torquay to London rattled along the tracks, its rhythm a soothing counterpoint to the turmoil left behind on the sapphire yacht. The Devon coast, with its sparkling sea and jagged cliffs, receded into memory, but the shadow of Sir Reginald Ashbourne's murder lingered in the minds of Captain Arthur Hastings and Hercule Poirot. The small compartment they shared was a haven of quiet, its plush seats and polished wood. Opposite, pored over his notebook, his pencil making precise annotations. "Poirot," Hastings ventured, breaking the silence. "It's over, isn't it? Clara's in custody, the truth is out. Yet I can't shake the feeling there's more to this, those other secrets you mentioned, the ones in Sir Reginald's notebook. Are we truly done?" Poirot's green eyes flicked up, a faint smile playing beneath his mustache. "Mon ami, you are perceptive. The case, it is solved, oui. The murderer, she is caught. But the heart of man, it is a tapestry of secrets, and some threads remain unwoven. The notebook, the initials, the sums, they hint at a larger game, one Sir Reginald played with many players." Hastings leaned forward, intrigued. "You mean blackmail? You think he was holding something over the others? Grayson, Wentworth, even Mrs. Marlowe?" Poirot closed his notebook with a snap, his expression enigmatic. "Blackmail, perhaps, or leverage. Sir Reginald, he was a man who collected power as others collect art.
The notebook, it lists initials, L, G, H, W, C, D, and sums of money, payments, debts, or bribes. We know Clara's secret, but the others? They guard their own. Hastings frowned, recalling the guests' strained faces. Grayson's telegram, H, and higher stakes. Could that be tied to the notebook? And Wentworth's sedative, Marlowe's diary, they all seemed to hide something. Précisément, Poirot said, tapping his temple. The little gray cells. They see the connections, but without evidence, they remain shadows. We have done our duty to justice, Hastings. The murder is solved. The rest, it is for the consciences of those who sail away. The train's whistle sounded, a mournful note that echoed Hastings' mood. He thought of Lady Beatrice, her grief tempered by betrayal, and of Clara, whose ambition had led to ruin. Poor Lady Beatrice, he said, to lose her husband, then learn of his secrets, and Clara's. Do you think she'll recover? Poirot's gaze softened, a rare glimpse of empathy. Madame Ashbourne, she is resilient. The heart, it bends but does not always break. She will mourn, but she will find her strength. As for Mademoiselle Duval, her path is darker, but it was her choice. They fell silent, the train's rhythm filling the void. Poirot opened his notebook again, reviewing his timeline of the murder. The light in Sir Reginald's cabin at 10, the argument at 11, the footsteps at midnight, the fatal strike between 2 and 4. The earring, the scratched deck, the picked lock, all had pointed to Clara, but the cruise tools. Could he be involved? Poirot shook his head. No, Harrow is a man of duty, not deceit. But H, it could be another, someone beyond the yacht. A partner in Sir Reginald's schemes, perhaps. The notebook suggests he dealt with many, not all present. Hastings leaned back, frustrated. So we'll never know. That's not like you, Poirot. You always tie up every loose end. Poirot's smile was wry. Not every end, mon ami. The world, it is messy. And even Hercule Poirot cannot unravel every knot. We have caught the killer. That is our victory. The rest, it belongs to time. The train slowed as it approached a small station, passengers bustling on the platform. Poirot closed his notebook and stood, adjusting his hat. Come, Hastings. We will take tea in the dining car. A moment of repose. It is deserved. In the dining car, surrounded by the clink of china and the murmur of conversation, Poirot seemed almost relaxed, though his eyes never lost their sharpness. Over tea and scones, Hastings pressed him further. What about Crane's article? He was scribbling notes the whole time. Do you think he'll write about the yacht? Expose those secrets? Poirot sipped his tea, his expression thoughtful. Monsieur Crane. He is young, ambitious, but not without heart. I advised him to write with compassion. The story of the Sapphire Yacht. It is a tragedy, not a scandal. I believe he will choose his words carefully. Hastings nodded, though his mind lingered on the notebook. And that notebook, will you turn it over to the police? It could lead to more, couldn't it? Poirot's fingers brushed his mustache. The notebook, it is with the Coast Guard, as evidence. They will investigate, perhaps, but Sir Reginald's secrets, they are scattered now, like ashes on the sea. The police, they will focus on Clara's crime. The rest, it fades into shadow. As the train neared London, the countryside gave way to the city's sprawl, its chimneys and rooftops, a reminder of the world beyond the yacht's claustrophobic drama. Hastings felt a pang of relief at returning to familiar ground, but also a lingering unease. Poirot, he said, do you ever feel unsatisfied? Like there's more to know, even after the case is closed? Poirot's eyes met his.
a spark of understanding in their depths. Always, mon ami. The mind, it craves order, but life, it is not so tidy. We do what we can. Restore justice, uncover truth. The rest, we leave to fate. Hercule Poirot, he does not dwell on what cannot be known. The train pulled into Paddington Station cab. Poirot glanced at Hastings, a faint smile on his lips. To Baker Street, mon ami. A hot bath, a good meal, and perhaps a new puzzle awaits. The world, it never stops turning. Hastings chuckled, the weight lifting slightly. You're incorrigible, Poirot, but I wouldn't have it any other way. The cab rolled into the city, carrying them toward home, where the next adventure, no doubt, was only a matter of time. Chapter 14. The Echoes of Truth. The London air was thick with the familiar scent of coal smoke and damp cobblestones, as Hercule Poirot and Captain Arthur Hastings stepped from their cab onto Baker Street. The bustle of the city, with its clattering hansoms and chattering pedestrians, felt like a return to reality after the claustrophobic drama of the Sapphire Yacht. Yet, for Hastings, the case lingered like a shadow, its resolution both a triumph and a burden. Poirot, his cream suit still pristine despite the journey, carried himself with the quiet confidence of a man who had once again brought order to chaos. As they ascended the stairs to their rooms, the weight of the past week seemed to settle into the silence between them. In their familiar sitting room, with its crackling fire and well-worn armchairs, Hastings sank into a seat, his mind still aboard the yacht. "Poirot," he said, his voice tinged with unease. "It's done, isn't it? Clara's in custody. The Coast Guard has the evidence. But I keep thinking about that notebook, those initials, those sums. Could there be another crime, waiting to be uncovered?" Poirot, pouring himself a tisane, paused, his green eyes thoughtful. "Mon ami, you are like the hound who scents a trail even after the hunt is over. The case of Sir Reginald Ashbourne, it is closed. Clara Duval, she has confessed, and the dagger, the box, the earring, they tell her story. But you are right. The notebook, it hints at a larger tapestry, one we cannot fully unravel." Hastings leaned forward, his curiosity piqued. "So you think there's more? That Sir Reginald was blackmailing others, not just Clara?" Poirot sat, his fingers steepled, his expression enigmatic. Blackmail. It is a word too simple for a man like Sir Reginald. He was a collector of power, Hastings. Secrets were his currency. The notebook, with its LG, HW, and others, suggest he held sway over many. But without the letters, Clara burned by her fear of exposure. The telegram. It was a thread in the web, but not the one that caught the killer. We must let it rest, Hastings, lest we chase ghosts. The fire crackled, casting flickering shadows on the walls. Hastings, restless, rose to pace. "I suppose you're right. But Lady Beatrice, she's left to pick up the pieces. And the others, Grayson, Wentworth, Marlowe, they'll carry their secrets back to their lives. It feels incomplete." Poirot's smile was gentle, a rare softness in his demeanor. "Life, mon ami, it is never complete. The truth, it is a light that reveals much, but not all. Lady Beatrice, she will rebuild, as the strong do. Grayson, Wentworth, Marlowe, they will face their own consciences. Our task was to find the murderer, and that we have done. A knock at the door interrupted them. Mrs. Hudson, their landlady, entered with a tray of tea and biscuits, her face bright with curiosity. "Back from your adventures, gentlemen. The papers are buzzing about a murder on a yacht. Was that your doing, Mr. Poirot?" Poirot's mustache twitched with amusement. "Madame Hudson, the papers, they exaggerate. But yes, Hercule Poirot has brought justice once more. The details, they are for the courts, not the headlines." She chuckled, setting down the tray. "You're a marvel, Mr. Poirot. I'll leave you to your rest." As she departed, Hastings poured himself a cup of tea, his mind still turning. What about Victor Crane? His article could stir things up. If he digs into that notebook, those secrets could come out. Poirot nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Monsieur Crane, he is young, ambitious, but not reckless. I trust he will write with care, as I advised. The story of the Sapphire Yacht, it is a tragedy, not a scandal to be exploited. He will honor that, I think." Hastings sighed, settling back into his chair. "You always seem so certain, Poirot. How do you do it? Solve the case, then walk away, knowing there's more beneath the surface?" Poirot's eyes gleamed, reflecting the firelight. "It is the discipline of the mind, Hastings. The little gray cells. They seek order, but they also accept limits. We cannot solve every mystery, only those that demand justice. The rest we leave to time, to fate, to the hearts of those who carry them." The evening deepened, the sounds of London filtering through the window. Hooves on cobblestones, the distant cry of a newsboy. Poirot rose, crossing to the mantelpiece, where he adjusted a small vase with his characteristic precision. "Tomorrow, mon ami, we rest. A quiet day. Perhaps a walk in the park. The world, it will call us soon enough." Hastings chuckled. "The truth, it shines, even in the shadows." As the fire burned low, Hastings felt the case's echoes soften, replaced by the comfort of their familiar routine. The yacht, its secrets and its tragedy, were now part of the past, a chapter closed by Poirot's brilliance. Yet, as he glanced at his friend, he knew the little Belgian's mind was already open to the next mystery, ready to unravel whatever secrets the world might bring. Chapter 15. The Final Curtain. The London fog, thick and clinging, wrapped Baker Street in a shroud as Hercule Poirot and Captain Arthur Hastings settled into their rooms, the echoes of the Sapphire Yacht's tragedy still reverberating in their minds. It was the evening after their return from Torquay, and the familiar comforts of their sitting room, the crackling fire, the scent of Mrs. Hudson's tea, the soft ticking of the mantel clock, offered a stark contrast to the tension of the past week. Yet, for Hastings, the case refused to fade, its unresolved threads tugging at his thoughts like loose stitches. Poirot, seated in his favorite armchair, sipped a tisane, his green eyes distant but serene, as if the mystery had settled into its proper place within his ordered mind. "Poirot," Hastings said, breaking the quiet, "it's really over, isn't it? Clara's trial will come. The yacht will sail again, and life goes on. But I can't help feeling we've left something behind. Those secrets in Sir Reginald's notebook, the H in Grayson's telegram. It's like a story with no final page." Poirot set down his cup, his mustache twitching in a faint smile. "Mon ami, you are a romantic, always seeking the perfect ending. Life, it is not a novel with every chapter neatly closed. The case of the Sapphire Yacht, it is solved, Mademoiselle Duval. She is the murderer, and justice will follow. The notebook, the telegram, they are shadows hints of other stories. Hercule Poirot, he cannot chase every shadow, only those that cast light on the crime. Hastings leaned forward, his tea untouched. But don't you wonder, Poirot, who was H? What were those sums in the notebook? Sir Reginald was playing a dangerous game. Blackmail, leverage, whatever you call it. Couldn't it lead to another crime? Poirot's eyes gleamed. A spark of amusement mingled with wisdom. You are tenacious, Hastings, like the English bulldog. Sir Reginald, he was a man who wove a web of secrets. The initials, L.G., H.W., perhaps others. They suggest debts, promises, or threats, expressions softening. Madame Ashburn, she is a woman of strength, though she does not yet know it. The truth, it has wounded her, but it has also freed her from the illusions of her marriage. She will rebuild, Hastings, as the heart always does, given time. A knock at the door announced Mrs. Hudson, bearing a tray of sandwiches and a folded newspaper. "The evening edition, gentlemen," she said, her eyes bright with curiosity. "There's a piece about that yacht murder. They're calling it the Sapphire Scandal." Poirot took the paper, his lips pursing as he scanned the headline. Scandal. Toujours scandal. The press, they love their drama, but let us see what Monsieur Crane has written. Hastings peered over his shoulder as Poirot unfolded the paper. The article, penned by Victor Crane, was restrained, focusing on the tragedy of Sir Reginald's death and the swift resolution by a renowned Belgian detective. Clara's name was mentioned, but her motives were left vague, and the other guests were spared exposure. "He listened to you," Hastings said, impressed. "No gossip, no sensationalism." Poirot's smile was approving. "Monsieur Crane, he has a heart, as I hoped. He writes of justice, not scandal. This is well." They ate in companionable silence, the fire casting warm shadows. Hastings, his mind still restless, said, "What about the others? Grayson, Wentworth, Marlowe? They'll go back to their lives, but those secrets in the notebook, could they come back to haunt them?" Poirot's fingers brushed his mustache, a gesture of contemplation. "The notebook. It is with the police now, as evidence. They may investigate, or they may not. Grayson, he will guard his business dealings more closely. Wentworth, he will return to his patients, perhaps with a heavier conscience. Madame Marlowe, she will find new gossip to chase. Their secrets, they are their own to carry, unless fate brings them to light." Hastings chuckled, shaking his head. "You're so calm about it, Poirot. I'd be itching to dig deeper, to find out who H was, what those sums meant." Poirot's eyes twinkled. "And that, mon ami, is why you are the heart and I am the mind. You feel the mystery. I solve it. Together, we are formidable, no? But for now, the case is closed. The Sapphire Yacht, it sails into memory, and we look to the future." The clock struck 9, its chimes a gentle reminder of time's passage. Poirot rose, crossing to the window, where the fog pressed against the glass like a living thing. "London, it is full of secrets, Hastings. The yacht, it was but one stage. Tomorrow, perhaps, another calls." Hastings joined him, gazing into the misty, obscuring the world beyond. Hastings felt a surge of gratitude for his friend's unyielding brilliance. The Sapphire Yacht, with its murder and its secrets, was behind them. A chapter closed in the grand book of Poirot's adventures. Yet, as they stood together, the promise of new mysteries loomed, as certain as the London fog, and as inevitable as the turning of the tide.